existing, you could see that ultimately they ended up all losing their life for the cause. I mean, these 12 people changed the world, literally their actions. And the crucifixion literally divided time.
It's good that it's out of our hands. We can bring the intellect, but God brings the spirit.
I agree with that.
So when that soul walks away and that soul is seeking, it's not about the seed that we planted. It's about how he's going to nourish that.
And you raise a very good point. I feel like maybe we take too much responsibility that we're able to convince somebody of this or that. Mm-hmm. I think that we make ourselves ready to share the information. And I don't like the idea that we suggest that God needs help in reaching somebody in the way that maybe we feel about it. Sure, we want to do a good job. Sure, we want to share in a way that's effective. I absolutely understand that. But on the other hand, sometimes I'm concerned about the need for politics to, say, shape somebody's view. Mm-hmm. That we see this as winners and losers versus, this is a win for the church. This is a loss for the church in terms of the, political or the news media lens. I think that we often set up the battle over the so-called soul of America as a sporting event, because that's the format that the news media uses. We often talk about that in trials in the courtroom, the jury decisions, right? When the trials are reported, and I always hated when they would report on trials I was involved in, because the news media was like, today, the prosecution had a good day today, and then the next day would come and say, well, the defense had a really good day. And I'm saying, that's really not how it works. These people are taking it all in, and when they go back into the room to deliberate at the end of hearing everything, what's being described in the news is unrecognizable to what really is taking place when the decision is made. And there's really nothing I can sort of do about it, because the media is not going to stop treating it like it's a football game, first, second, third, fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. But the jury, a group of individual people who are called upon to make the judgment, like they've been selected to pick. And they didn't want to be there. They're kind of random. And after they're done, they kind of disappear back into the community, having done their job. And they receive, judgment about their decision, certainly in the high-profile cases, because that's the way we've chosen to go about doing it now.
I think that goes back to like what I said earlier about how you handle the word. Well, that's a perfect example how the jury handles that, and then how the media handles that. If you're just following this, you're never going to be fulfilled in anything, because you're just getting that, that craving filled. Whereas these people, they know every nook and cranny. They know everything. They're the ones that have to go in depth and deliberate, and you're just out there waiting for the answer.
Yeah, and I think also, just like guidance is given in the Bible, right? There's the way the rules are supposed to be handled, like what they're supposed to consider and not consider, how they're supposed to go about doing their job. There's always sort of that insider, perspective from those observing from the outside. I want to know the real ins and outs of what took place. Well, certainly appropriate judgment really requires care and thoughtfulness, right? All of our rules in the law courtroom are to try to get as close as possible to the true answer. They fall short because we're human beings. We don't have the ability to make perfect rules, to get perfect decisions, but it's aspirational, right? that we try to make sure that the right things are heard and that all the information is heard, and things that shouldn't be heard are kept from them, right? And so I just believe that those who know that we have a great story to tell need to take care in making sure that they navigate that properly, because there are some people who, through no fault of their own, just don't, understand that they have options and choices how they like to think about things. And that the worst thing in the world is somebody who seeks the information and they get the wrong information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, to me, that's really very tough.
And that comes with intent too, because you just saying that reminds me of a story with me back. I was engaged. Things didn't work out. Had an engagement ring. I wanted to sell that engagement ring. Well, I went downtown to a pawn shop, and it was the only place that, for some reason I can't remember, but they were the only place that wanted to take it. The woman said the only way she would take that is if I let her proclaim the gospel to me.
Wow. And
that's why I mean, like, intent, because my intent was to get the money for the ring.
Right.
Her intent was to, now granted, looking back, knowing what I know now, the word was poorly handled. And I didn't care. Mm-hmm. But what she said and how she said it, like you said, having that information, having the right information, and to be able to convey that information correctly really has to do with, that next step. Again, the Spirit takes it and it's out of our hands, but my intent wasn't to, when I walked out that door with my money, the last thing I thought about was God. But here I am now, 35 years later, I can look back on that and see, just like you said, the error in how that was handled in that short amount of time. I was in there for just, 10 or 15 minutes, and it's important how we handle that, regardless of the intent of the other person.
Yeah, I think that for me, just my own personal experience, and maybe there are others who have a different view, I really have never seen anyone be able to receive the message of the gospel apart from a testimony. People are persuaded by, okay, how did your life change?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's why it's set up the way that it is. Mm-hmm. I feel like that everything about Jesus' ministry on earth sets that example, the flaws of how people receive information. I mean, imagine the disciples walking with him, seeing these miracles, and they're still, struggling with their own, selfishness, with their own pride. Look how patient Jesus was with them. I mean, I could imagine, I could imagine under those circumstances, there'd be a lot of impatience with trying to still, hang with these guys when they're doing a whole range of things that draw into question whether there's a truly connecting with the purpose. But, the 3-year walk, his ascending, and then them receiving the Spirit to assist them in doing more than they ever thought they could do. Remember, these guys scatter at the crucifixion. And if we think about it as human beings, totally explainable response. Oh, they got the big man now. They're going to disgrace him, hang him upside down in front of everybody and torture him. I'm out.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was their response. So what changed, right? So the story of his showing back up, right? Them seeing sort of the ultimate, which is, well, they tried to crucify me, but that didn't work out for them. They still had doubts, but he showed up to even try to resolve that, showing up to Thomas, Thomas running his mouth.
I was just going to say
Think about
that.
that, right? Like, I had to put my hand in his. How many times have we done stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, be careful what you ask for, because, like, I care about you and the work I wanted to do. And, of course, he falls down in disgrace and, But then, Jesus doesn't let him off the hook. Jesus kind of reaffirms the point of the whole thing.
And how long, when do you think the change came from them thinking he was going to conquer the way earthly people think he was going to conquer? He was going to come in and take over and rule instead of what really happened. They were. Where was that? When did that change happen? You think with them, because we have to relate with that too.
Well, I think that when they're kind of going around with him and he's doing his miracles, I'll be honest with you, I think they were so deeply connected still with self that they really couldn't get it right until he returned to affirm that he had risen. And the reason I say that is true is because, of course, they scatter when he's in big trouble. By the way, as I said earlier, it's not the most inexplicable choice, right? This guy is in big trouble and he's not doing so good, right? And he was trying to tell them, I got this. But they were still processing how that was going to happen. And I think that when he says, I'm going to send you a comforter, and when the Spirit is sent, when they're in the upper room, I think that this becomes part of the mysteries of God we're talking about. How does the supernatural power, how is it going to be packaged and sent, right? Which, of course, they had no idea, but when they were working through it actually existing, you could see that ultimately they ended up all losing their life for the cause. These 12 people changed the world, literally their actions. And the crucifixion literally divided time, right? Sometimes I do go to the historical books when I'm preparing the historians and the archaeologists, because I feel that people need to know it's just not what I think. And the great Jewish historian Josephus, Jesus was a historically documented fact. Like his existence, that he was trouble for the Roman Empire, and the issues that took place in Jerusalem, which is still the center of lots of very important human conflict, right? This is something that is worth taking time being a priority to kind of explain, right? That there's enough for you to understand there's more to know. But the part of it that makes the most sense? Look at the faith that's needed to accept the other part, right?
Yeah.
That's the personal part. It's like, I can't want to have you pretend to have faith or pretend to have gifts of the Spirit or pretend to be hearing from God, right? This he leaves to the challenge of trying to reach people, have the faith walk. It's not easy. Our part requires a certain discipline and understanding and commitment. But he takes over after that. And I certainly believe that just like the pawn jeweler, right? In your life, it's like, okay, I'll tell you what you want to hear, but just so I can get on with what I'm trying to do. But maybe that happened to you so that you're able to contribute the gaps and the journey of your own faith life, right? Because we don't need to make any decisions about her. What we know is what she tried to do, and what we know is how you felt about what she tried to do.
Yeah.
And so now if we step back and we say, well, why is it that you believe in all of these things which seem so uncertain? Well, I think for most Christians, there is that moment when, because he demonstrates to us, you know, in our personal relationship, that I want to know what I need you to have me know. I don't think that leaves a lot of time for anything except the most a careful judgment, contemplate repentance, preparing and study, and handling people with a certain gentleness that's almost unfathomable. Mm-hmm. I mean, the biggest part of Jesus' 3-year walk really has to do with how he dealt with people who disagreed with him, right? And how he still was consistent, you know, with the scriptures. Mm-hmm. You know, I still go back to Thomas, you know, blessed who, you know, them that believe that has not seen. I mean, he still called him out, you know, to say, look, you got to be careful how you handle this. Mm-hmm. Because the truth of the matter is, people are they're going to want to deny my return. They're going to deny that I've risen, right? I mean, there are discussions of when he returned, you know, the dead were getting up and walking around. Just, I guess, you know, I'd like to think about it as, you know, the leftover power of his glory. You know, he's like, oh, I would like it to kind of be contained, but I can't. I'm the infinite one of the universe. I can't really be contained like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's going back to the Old Testament, Moses, you know, have closer fellowship with God. And what he said, well, hide yourself in the mountain, because if you looked at me straight on, you drop dead. Mm-hmm. So you hide in the mountain, not just like pass by. And of course, you know, it's like, oh, wow, there's a lot here, right? Mm-hmm. But I must say that we need to get back to the fundamentals of demonstrating that the redemption story is a story of his love for us, to give us a chance to be able to approach error and become better as his created thing. Because we know that we are, the potential for evil is vast. You know, one of my New Testament scriptures that I often think about in terms of the line of work I was deal with, the heart of man is evil and desperately wicked, right? Mm-hmm. Who can know it? I mean, you know, there are moments when we as people can go off the rails, moments and spaces where you just go, oh my goodness, how? Mm-hmm. Perhaps God gave me the line of work that he gave me as like a constant reminder. Don't you ever think that you're so great that, you know, you can just look at this other person and say, I would never do that. 'Cause I can tell you what, through my almost 4 decades practicing law and the calls I've gotten from people and the stuff is, you know, you find that someone who you had looked on for many years as being, you know, upstanding and vigilant about doing the right thing or whatever. And then, you know, you get that call, which comes with the disappointment to say, you did what? Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that that's a reminder of me of humility. Mm-hmm. Right? Is to say, look, you know, that's the people who need what God has.
And look at even in the news now, look at all the pastors that are stepping down.
Yeah. I think that this is a combination of disobedience and spiritual warfare, and of course the media glare, right? Mm-hmm. How much of this may have been going on, but now the opportunities for it to be revealed are just greater, you know, greater scrutiny. It's going on in all places in our society, by the way. A woman went into a Supreme Court event a couple of weeks ago and tape recorded a couple of justices talking sort of out of school on some things maybe that I'm sure if they knew they were being recorded, they would never say. But I think the woman was kind of like, well, what do you think about this? As if she was in agreement. And then sent the tape out. And it's unfortunately, or at least, sometimes you think, oh my God, I'm glad that didn't fall on my watch. I actually know a number of the people who were kind of in that mess. Like, it just turned out that it was their turn or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, this is disrupts the integrity of the programming. And, now we got to, and now, I mean, will they survive this from an employment perspective? Maybe they will, but there's a black eye.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you're saying, like the hot mics, right? Like we love hot mics, right? Somebody's at the mic, and is it a hot mic? Is it really hot? Did they want it to be hot, right? So we're in a different kind of a space. I would like to remind people that one of the names of the enemy of Satan is accuser. Mm-hmm. It's such a profoundly powerful tool, the tool of accusation, and how we should manage it. I listened to several podcasts today, and the whole debate was over, do we need to know what, say, Pastor Evans did in order for it to be vital to understanding, his decision or others, right? Because there's several others out there. And, it's interesting to me that we're spending all the time debating whether or not us needing to know what it is or whether he should have been more forthcoming to say what it is so people wouldn't have to wonder about it. And one of the comments was, why are we trying to behave in what we call a sanctified discussion when really what this is your nosiness? You just want to know. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't have there's really no value added for you to know except that you want to, right? And so I can show you some scriptures that suggest you should mind your business about that, right? But at the same time, right, it does create a challenge where people say, I don't know about this church thing, right? And I remember growing up, and every time Billy Graham would have a crusade and would be testified on, televised, and I would watch it. And I always admired his clarity and his brevity, and how he seemed to want to really take care with what he was sharing, and also to keep the salvation process as simple as possible. And I do understand that also that when he traveled, for example, he always had 2 or 3 guys with him. Mm-hmm. He always had them go into whatever, hotel room he had to make sure it was empty. I mean, and some of these things seem like, well, it's, boy, he seems to be going through a lot. But again, he's a flesh and blood man. He would say that he, had fallen into sin and had made poor decisions himself. He'd be the first to admit the humility of God's call. But I think 2 things. I think that we know he had spoken to more people in person than anybody in human history. So we talk about what Jesus did. I mean, the scripture says, you'll do greater things than I did. And you say, well, I don't understand that. Well, he's in all the countries of the world doing crusades, lived 99 years. I saw him here when he was in Baltimore. Last time he publicly spoke at a crusade was here in Baltimore. I like to think that makes us very special. And I remember him saying during that, it's no accident I'm here, and it's no accident this is probably will be it for me. Again, one of the mysteries of God, what's the big deal about Baltimore? That he felt like, this is where I'm going to do, my last public appearance. But I do think that some of those themes, the simplicity of it, how he was encouraging that this is an option for people. And the fact that he would often say at the end, I don't know if you came here with somebody or somebody brought you here or you were invited here, not even wanting to be here. And there was something that's always so interesting that he would say at the end, which maybe is no big deal, but it was always a big deal to me. He would tell people, come on down, come down. We have people to talk to and pray with you. And he says, if somebody brought you here, don't worry, they'll wait. And that always blew me away. You know, they'll wait, you know, till you take care of whatever you know, if you're feeling drawn to come down. Mm-hmm. And I think that the heart of, I guess it was the Spirit operating through him, is to make this audacious statement. You know, in every city around the world, like if someone brought you here, they'll wait. Mm-hmm. I don't think that had much to do with his knowing the people who brought him there, or the urging that they felt drawn to come. I think that's the operation of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. It's like, I govern everybody who is involved. So if you feel like you need to come, your opportunity, the way that he did publicly in the New Testament through his walk, he's like, you know, there's nothing to worry about because you took the first step to be here and you feel that need to take care of business. And I know that there are still a lot of mysteries about, you know, coming to faith and questions about people, whether you can lose your salvation these are all not questions that people are going to be comfortable with the answers, or it might take some time for that to settle in. But I think that with all of the issues that, you know, folks have and what they struggle with, the God of the universe can find you. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important for us to do the things he's assigned for us. There are lots of assignments we take on that he didn't assign for us. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to learn to have the humility and to join with people. And they say the expression, meet them where they are. If you really hear a lot of stories of people who come to faith, you know, there's always that person that met them where they were, that tolerated them, that put up with them.
Yeah, Jeff Moose has 2 years of toleration for me.
So I feel that it's very exciting to I think it's very exciting to be part of a process where we're both learning as we're giving, we're both living as we're learning, that we can embrace each other in a kind of love. And then when we get into spaces where we don't agree on something, that we know there is a God who is ready to correct us and love us and guide us. You know, once I went to a men's retreat, and one of the most fantastic things happened I had really never seen before in front of me. It's 100 men, and everybody was, you know, there for different reasons. Some unchurched, under church, some in church, a questioning church, some that had different beefs about this or that. And I saw two men who had an issue that followed them from high school into adulthood, reconcile before that 100 men, not knowing that that's what was going to happen, not knowing that that was the space that was being prepared, it's available, and to spontaneously, through the movement of that setting, forgive each other. And, you know, I think forgiveness is the hardest thing in the Bible. See, people say, oh, forgive and forget. Forgiveness is hard.
Yeah. It's a commitment. Forgiveness isn't just a word. It's not just a saying. It's not just a thought. It's a commitment.
Absolutely.
Because that's something not only do you have to, remove from them, but you have to stop carrying it yourself.
Yes, and it's right. It's the double edge, and it requires It requires a certain kind of sort of release. I remember former pastor of mine, he had one of the greatest statements during a sermon where he's talking about people who won't forgive and learning that process of forgiveness. And he would say, you know, if you have an unforgiving spirit and you carry anger towards someone and you won't release it, he said it's like you taking the poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Yeah.
And, you know, that seems profoundly silly thing. But at the same time, isn't that what we do? You're forgiving to release yourself.
Yeah, forgiveness is actually for us. Forgiving is for us.
Yes.
That's something that we're not meant to carry, that burden. You know, forgiveness, we have to release that.
Yeah, and I think that you know, the enemy would have us be in a posture where we don't, and so that leads us to, you know, a lot of things where, you know, wastes a lot of our time getting on with what God would have us to do in our will, or just our own healing.